Thank you for joining Leo today for this webinar, Best Practices for Evaluation, Insights from the Stay the Course Study. My name is Andrea Ringer. I am a research associate at Leo, the Wilson Sheehan Lab for Economic Opportunities at the University of Notre Dame. I'm happy to be hosting the webinar today. Leo is a nonpartisan research center established in 2012. We partner with nonprofit and government agencies across the country to generate reliable, scientific evidence about the impact of programs designed to reduce poverty and improve lives. Our areas of interest include housing, health, criminal justice, education, child welfare, and self-sufficiency. Once we have generated reliable evidence, we work with partners to share this information with a wide range of policymakers and practitioners to drive policy, program, and funding decisions, and in turn, improve lives. A few quick housekeeping notes for this webinar. The webinar is 1 hour. The presentation will be approximately 35 minutes, with 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A. You should feel free to ask questions using the Q&A button at the top of the screen throughout the webinar. We will get to as many questions as possible. Finally, we will post a recording of the webinar and the slides on Leo's website at leo.nd.edu. We will send an email with details following the webinar. With that, let me introduce the presenters on today's webinar, Jim Sullivan and Corinne Weaver. Jim Sullivan is the co-founder of Leo and a professor of economics here at Notre Dame. He is a co-principal investigator on the evaluation of Stay the Course. Jim is an alum of Notre Dame and received his PhD in economics from Northwestern University. Corinne Weaver is the Director of Research and Evaluation at Catholic Charities Fort Worth, where she oversees the research and evaluation work of the agency. Corinne spent her early career providing psychological counseling and assessment services within the public school, juvenile justice, and child welfare systems. Driven by a desire to better understand the efficacy of psychological interventions, Corinne transitioned into roles supporting several research and evaluation projects, and found her true calling helping Catholic Charities Fort Worth apply research insights into actionable improvements in service delivery for families in need. Corinne holds a BS in psychology from the University of Georgia and an MA in psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. In today's Leo webinar, Jim and Corinne will share findings from the Leo evaluation of Stay the Course, a community college mentoring program run by Catholic Charities Fort Worth. They will also describe key insights from the process of partnering with Leo to conduct an impact evaluation, including how to integrate evaluation into program operations, how to handle challenges with randomization, how to monitor implementation to maximize impact, and how to share evaluation results with key stakeholders. With that, I would like to turn this over to Corinne to begin the presentation on best practices for evaluation.
Thank you, Andrea. The Stay the Course program is an intervention designed to promote persistence and degree completion among low-income community college students. And we do this by addressing the personal, non-academic, social, and institutional barriers that prevent students from succeeding. Stay the Course has two primary components to the intervention. The first is intensive case management, and the second is emergency financial assistance. I'll talk about each of those components in a little bit more detail, but first I wanted to give you some background to why we designed Stay the Course in the first place. The first reason is that we know the annual tuition for community college is on average 64% less than the tuition cost of in-state public four-year universities. Therefore, community colleges offer low-income students a cost-effective way to achieve higher levels of education and prepare for the demands of the labor market. We also know that the earnings of individuals with associate's degrees is on average over $9,000 more per year than the earnings of individuals with a high school degree. Finally, we know that the unemployment rate for adults aged 25 to 40 with an associate's degree is on average 42% less than the unemployment rates of adults with a high school degree. However, despite the lower costs and higher returns of community college persistence, We know that there is a completion crisis in American community colleges. Specifically, as you can see here, 6 years after initially enrolling in community college, 39.1% of community college students had earned either a 2 or a 4-year degree. However, 60.8% had not earned a degree at all. And this completion crisis is particularly high among minority populations and those from disadvantaged backgrounds. Further, not completing a degree can be financially crippling for a community college student because they often incur debt, but do not actually obtain a degree that can help them increase their wages. So at Catholic Charities Fort Worth, and in partnership with Leo, when we learned this information, we decided to take a deeper dive into what some of the barriers are to graduation, particularly for low-income students. And that process really revealed 4 main barriers to college graduation. The first 2 being college costs and academic under-preparation were areas that we felt the community college and other academic institutions were better able to address. But as a nonprofit social service provider, we felt highly equipped to address the other 2 areas that we discovered, which were institutional obstacles and personal non-academic obstacles. So when we say institutional obstacles, we're really talking about the complexity of navigating the college system. So particularly as colleges receive declining state appropriations and they have rising enrollment costs, the ratio of students to resources starts to really get to a place of disadvantaging the student. So, you know, they might go see an advisor or a counselor, but be one of hundreds, if not thousands of students that are assigned to that particular staff member. And so we designed Stay the Course to really be able to have low caseloads so that our navigators, is what we call our case managers, our navigators are really able to work with students in a more intimate way and to really help them to navigate all of the sort of challenges and obstacles that are a part of the college system. The other area that Stay the Course is designed to address is the personal and non-academic obstacles that often get in the way of college persistence and completion. And we like to think of this as basically life and life that happens outside of the classroom. And so many of our students that we serve are older and more financially independent. And so they often have to balance work and school at the same time. Further, they often have troubles identifying and maintaining quality childcare for their children, or they're often having troubles with reliable transportation. The area that we're in, Catholic Charities Fort Worth in Texas, is not known for its public transportation systems. And so our students are often struggling with how to get to class on time. And then further, they often experience these unanticipated financial shocks throughout the year due to, you know, potentially a car breaking down, or, you know, in the summer when it's really hot here, they have an air conditioning bill that is out of control and could potentially get in the way of their ability to make a tuition payment. And so Stay the Course is really designed to help with all of these types of obstacles that students face. So Stay the Course, as I mentioned, is predominantly based on 2 primary components, the first being intensive case management and the second being emergency financial assistance. And those components were built with the principles of being strengths-based, customizable, holistic, and long-term. And so what we mean here is that while we are available to help students overcome barriers, we also really spend a lot of time with them identifying what their strengths are, what they're good at, and we do this as an intentional beginning to every semester that we meet with our students to really help identify, you know, what they bring to the table and how we can use their innate strengths to help address some of the barriers they're facing. When we say that our services are customizable, the best example I have of this is that, you know, we believe it's important to see our students face to face and to do that on a regular basis. But we also know that their schedules can be chaotic. They sometimes start at one of the local community college campuses and they might move and take classes at others. And so our goal is for our navigators to be as mobile as possible. They are housed at the community college campus, but they also travel to meet students either at their homes or at a kind of third-party location, or sometimes they'll be meeting them in between classes to grab a cup of coffee or to sit with them while they're eating their lunch, and try to be as mobile and flexible as possible to really meet the students where they're at. We also have long-term services. So specifically, students the program doesn't technically have an expiration date. So we had originally planned to serve students for about 3 years, but we did have a handful of students who were making great progress towards their degree, but hadn't quite crossed the graduation stage at the 3-year mark. And so, we had invested in them for so long that we continued to invest in them for their last semester or two. And overall, we do have very high retention rates to promote that long-term nature of the program. Specifically, in our second cohort, we saw that 75% of students had either completed the program or were still enrolled 1 year after enrollment, and 59% had either completed the program or were still enrolled after 2 years. Additionally, we pay a lot of attention to the cadence of our services. And what I mean there is that we believe regular, intentional interaction between the students and navigators is key to the success of Stay the Course. So we aim to engage with our students on a weekly basis, and that doesn't have to be a very lengthy interaction. It could be as simple as a text message conversation to check in on the student and see how an exam went, or whether or not they were able to prep for a particular course as they wanted to. But that frequent contact is really important. We also aim for 2 face-to-face meetings per month. And again, we already talked about that as being as flexible as possible, but we really believe that frequent interaction can really strengthen the relationship between the student and navigator, and it presents a situation where the student isn't sort of waiting for a problem to arise before they're addressing it with their navigator, but they're much more likely to be prompted to share something that might be a problem kind of before it emerges. And then we also aim for our students to complete 1 action step, which is a component of their service plan, every 3 weeks. And our navigators are trained to really help students break their service plans down into small actionable steps so that they can feel that sense of continuous movement towards their goals. Last, as I mentioned, Stay the Course has emergency financial assistance available to students. Specifically, they have access to $1,500 over the life of the program, but cannot draw down more than $500 per semester, and that's in order to help the funds sort of stretch. And those funds are available for non-academic emergency needs. So this would be the example I gave of your car breaking down and you have no way to get to class and you need a car repair, or potentially a very high electric bill, or a problem with a childcare provider and needing to switch providers. These are the types of things that our students are often coming to their navigators with, and they're able to access these funds in order to kind of smooth their financial situation out so they can continue to focus on school and not have to make a sacrifice of their academics in order to take care of life outside of the classroom. So in a little bit, you're going to hear Jim talk to you about some of the results that we've seen as a part of participating in an impact evaluation with Leo over the past several years. But before he does that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what it's been like for us as a nonprofit social service provider to integrate rigorous research into the work that we do. And the first consideration that I would suggest anybody considering this type of work take is this idea that by participating in rigorous research, you often have to limit the types of midstream program modifications that you're making. The reason for this is that rigorous research requires a somewhat stable intervention so that you're assessing the same thing from start to finish. However, I know from experience that what we plan in a boardroom, what we plan in a conference room, and then what we kind of put to paper for a program plan often takes a very different shape once we're actually working with students and we're out in the community and we're doing things live. And so the lesson that we've learned internally is to really take your time in developing an intervention that you're planning to pair with rigorous research. Test out components of it when you can, get in front of your population of interest and make sure that they're giving feedback on the intervention before you're going live. But also kind of once you've launched a program that is being evaluated, having really clear communication between the service providers and the research partners to ensure that when changes are made to the intervention, all kind of considerations have been taken into account and that all parties are kind of on the same page about when modifications are needed. And of course, if those modifications are in the best interest of the students or the program itself, we'll often make them. We just take a little bit more caution and care in the way that we make those decisions. Additionally, we've paid a lot of attention over the years to our data collection infrastructure and our ability to share that data in a confidential way. And so that's really for us has been about being really mindful that the data collection we're doing aligns with the goals of the program, and that we have secure sort of file sharing mechanisms and we've really thought carefully about how to properly de-identify our data before we get into sharing that with the research partners or our community college partners, and just doing so in an ethical way that really respects our students. We've also learned the importance of both leadership and staff commitment to the process of participating in impact evaluations. And the way we've done that is to really just promote sort of this is a shared learning opportunity, and to be as transparent as possible about what we're learning throughout our journey. We've learned that by taking extra steps to make sure that our board and our leadership team are bought in to participating in impact evaluations, we're able to really take the extra steps needed to ensure a quality intervention, and we don't feel forced to cut any corners. And from the staff perspective, we've learned that when they feel really comfortable and confident in understanding the reasons for and the results of an evaluation, they have less anxiety about producing results, and they're much more focused on learning from everything they can and constantly improving. Similarly, we've learned that our fundraising, when we go out and do fundraising, that our funders are really interested in this idea of shared learning. And so we often try to take them on this journey with us of helping us to shape the program, helping us to, when we learn, you know, what are the outcomes, what are the areas where we're not seeing outcomes, we invite our stakeholders into the conversation so they can be a part of that shared learning process. And that tends to kind of reduce any anxiety that anybody has about, you know, potentially what it means to kind of have this rigorous impact evaluation involved in the work. And the last lesson we've learned here is that a well thought out recruitment plan can really save you a lot of hassle later on. And so we're, with Stay the Course and with some of our other case management programs, we're embarking on long-term journeys with students and other clients. And we know that by clearly articulating what the intervention is up front and making that initial entry into the program really robust and clean and clear for the participants, they're much more likely to stick around for the long term. And it's with that long-term interaction that we're actually able to get the outcomes we're looking for. And so we've learned over time to really not minimize the importance of what that recruitment and enrollment process looks like, and to spend, you know, almost as much time on that as we are on designing the full intervention, because it really sets the students and the navigators up for a great relationship. A couple of other points to talk through. The first being the idea of random assignments. And Jim will talk about this a little bit more later as well when he talks about the way that the Stay the Course study was designed. But quickly, we basically had a group of students who were randomly assigned to receive the Stay the Course program services, and another group of students who were randomly assigned to receive services as usual at the community college. The reason for this is that it helps us to really learn what truly would have happened in the absence of the intervention, so we can measure true impact. While this is something that is really, you know, beneficial from the perspective of building rigorous evidence and knowing where to allocate our scarce resources, really being able to put those resources into things that are proven and we know work. In the short term, and sometimes for the social service providers that work at Catholic Charities Fort Worth, there can be a little bit of a challenge with balancing their natural state of empathy and wanting to support all clients with the kind of rigorous demands of random assignments. And so we have to just work hard on sort of a management lens here to make sure that our navigators really understand the rationale for this, and that they're able to kind of keep their emotional investment in the participants sort of in check in relation to this kind of broader goal that we're working to achieve. And so you'll see this quote here is really just from me. It's something I often say to our staff, is that sometimes you have to say no in the short time to a participant, but by doing so, you're helping to prove the efficacy of our services, and therefore making a case to expand and serve more clients later. And at the end of the day, we only have as many spots in the program as we have. We're going to have to turn some students away. And so we believe by following a random lottery procedure to do that, we're actually in many ways being more fair to the students that we serve than if we were to take a different approach. And then the last thing I'll talk about before passing it over to Jim is just this idea of how important it is to monitor implementation to maximize impact. So we believe strongly that without proper implementation of a program, there's no way we can expect to see the desired results. And so at Catholic Charities Fort Worth, we took two kind of important steps to make sure that we were implementing Stay the Course appropriately. The first is that we established a set of minimum expectations on service delivery. And then we also established an optimal goal. So obviously the goal is what we want to see, but the minimum expectation means if we see anything below this, we know we have a red flag that we need to address. And some of those two-person meetings and the weekly contacts fall into this service metric area for us. The second thing we did was then we took those metrics and we built them into our Salesforce database so that our staff had access to on-demand dashboards and reports and scorecards to be able to see this information. How are they stacking up against these metrics, both at a program level, but also at an individual navigator level on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It's a bit of a cliche, but it's the idea here that what gets measured is what gets done. And so we felt it was really important to make sure that all of our team members had easy access to understand how robustly the intervention was being implemented, because our belief is by paying attention there, that's sort of the leading indicator that can then promote the strong outcomes that we hope to see. And with that in mind, I'll pass it over to Jim so he can talk to you about what some of those outcomes have been to date.
Thank you, Corinne. And thanks to all of you for joining in on this webinar. It's been about 5 years now since we launched this impact evaluation of this really exciting and innovative program. And so I'm delighted to have this opportunity to share with you real results and really the impact these results are having on the growth of this program. So I'm going to lay out first the design of the experiment that we ran to measure the impact of Stay the Course, and then I'll share with you the results of that study. And so let me start by telling you a little bit about how that program was laid out. So back in the fall of 2013, we enrolled our initial cohort of students into the Stay the Course study. And the way that we did this is that we first, working with Catholic Charities Fort Worth, identified the eligibility criteria. What kinds of students did they want to enroll in this program? So these were low-income students identified as Pell eligible at the community college. These were students who were initially enrolling full-time status, and it had a minimum GPA requirement of 2.0. And what we did is share these requirements with the community college, and they gave us a list of students who satisfied all those criteria. And in the end, that list was upwards of 1,100 students at the Trinity River campus at Tarrant County College in Fort Worth, Texas. And then we at Leo randomized that list of students. Catholic Charities Fort Worth would not be able to serve all of these students, and so we gave them a shorter list of students that they would recruit to be in the program. And that shorter list was selected randomly, and so we had a group of students who were invited to participate in the program, and then a group of students who could not get access to the program because there was not capacity. And the experiment is simply following key outcomes over time for those two groups: the treatment group that was invited to participate and the control group that did not have that opportunity. And the initial enrollment into the program for the first cohorts of students occurred in the fall of 2013, and we have been following them up over time and giving periodic updates, sharing results with Catholic Charities Fort Worth. And we're now have data on key outcomes for up to 4 years after that initial enrollment. And the key outcomes that we're looking at are, first, are they still actively enrolled? And that means enrolled at any college. It could be at Tarrant County College, it could be at another community college they transferred, or it could be at a four-year college. And we get those data through Tarrant County College, who has those data from the National Student Clearinghouse. So we're not relying just on the data from the community college itself, but they have access to data that includes enrollment and degree completion information for all students in virtually any college across the country. So whether or not they're actively enrolled will be one outcome, and then whether or not they've obtained a degree will be another outcome that we will have examined. And I'm going to focus on the results for this fall 2013 cohort. In particular, I'm going to share results for you for 3 years after enrollment in the program. That's 150% of the standard time if you went full-time throughout to get your associate's degree. So I'll share, most of the results will be for 6 semesters after enrollment, but I'll also share some more recent results that are looking at these outcomes 8 semesters after, so at the four-year follow-up. So that's the general structure design of the experiment. We had 2 control groups, 2 groups of students well, I should say 2 treatment groups of students that were served through this study. So one group of students received the full package of services that Corinne described. So they were enrolled in the Stay the Course program. There was another subset of students that, from our list of eligible students, that were invited not to the Stay the Course program, but to receive just emergency financial assistance. And so you could think of this as a second treatment group that got just a subset of services available in Stay the Course. And we wanted to examine what is the impact of just having emergency financial assistance for a number of reasons. One is that the case management services that are available in Stay the Course can be expensive. Can we get the same outcomes by just providing financial assistance? And the other is that one of the fastest growing interventions to address issues outside of the college setting at community college campuses all across the country is providing emergency financial assistance. So we wanted some information on what is the impact of programs that provide that kind of assistance.